Yeah, okay from my side.
Okay.
Okay. So life has changed for everyone. However, with the contagious virus gripping the nation, the first line of defense, doctors and other healthcare workers, have been caught in the eye of a storm. I'm Sanjana Ramesh from IEEE UVC, here to talk to two doctors, Dr. Uma Ramesh, microbiologist heading the Department of Microbiology at SRL Diagnostics, Fortis Hospital, Bangalore, and Dr. Pruthu Narendra Dekhane, consultant infectious disease and infection control, taking care of the COVID ward at Fortis Hospital, Bangalore. On behalf of the student community of IEEE UEC, thank you so much, doctors, for taking the time to talk to us. So starting
Thank you.
Starting off, I know that the life of a doctor behind the scene conducting COVID tests is so different from the life of a doctor dealing with treatment and care of COVID patients. So Dr. Uma, can you start this off by sharing how it has been for you, this pandemic?
Well, this pandemic has been by far the most difficult and challenging phase of my entire career. The number of cases and the number of patients we get for COVID testing in the lab is overwhelming, actually. Well, to make matters worse, I think many of our healthcare workers, technicians, staff, colleagues are also getting infected, and we know that they will not be in the lab for about at least 2 weeks or till they get well to come back to work. And everyone inside the lab are working overtime without any break, and they are really stressed out and exhausted. And also, I'm sure Dr. Pruthu will agree with me, it's not easy to be in the PPE the entire day. It's difficult for us. And this period has indeed been very stressful at the moment.
Have you been scared of working with COVID samples, doctor?
Actually, no, it's a known fact for all of us that it is all healthcare workers are at high risk. It's not only the COVID time, previously also for us as a microbiologist and also for Dr. Pruthu as an infectious disease, we are at high risk, but we are committed to do our duty and to serve the sick. But we do take safety precautions, wearing the PPE so that we do not get infected. But however, having said that, I will be lying if I say that I'm not scared of carrying the virus back home and infecting my family. That is my only fear.
Okay. Dr. Pruthu, can you please share your experience in the COVID ward and how it has been different from a non-COVID ward?
Right. The COVID ward is definitely a lot different than the non-COVID areas. I would say it's once in a lifetime sort of experience. I don't know whether in our lifetime we are going to see another pandemic or not. I hope so, no. Yes, it's completely different. The most difficult part, I will say, is actually working in that PPE suit. Means now the PPE suits are a lot better than what they were last year. But still, it's first of all, no matter how good your AC, ventilation, all those systems are, it sweats a lot. It's hot. Your glasses, your visors tend to fog a lot, so your visibility is always affected. And even if you try to sort out those logistical issues, you're always wearing a double mask at least. So it's very difficult for your patient to actually hear you. So you have to literally many times, even shout on the top of your voice to make patients understand what you're trying to tell them. So it's definitely difficult, more physically challenging because you have to be in that kit for at least 4-5 hours minimum. And it's even more challenging, not only for a doctor, it's more challenging, I feel, for the nurses and the staff, because they're there more so throughout the day. Doctors are on slightly, what can you say, more on shift-based duration, but nurses are usually having less frequent changes. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult even to go to a washroom and come back, because you have to again doff, again guard on, which takes quite a bit of time. So yeah, it is definitely difficult, and working in a COVID ward where you work as you have been working for so many years, and it's more easy. You just do the routine stuff. So yes, it's definitely more difficult.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, definitely there were some things that I didn't realize, like about the logistical things, like wearing your suit for all these hours. Dr. Uma, can you shed some light on how long it takes to get a report when I give a sample for a COVID test?
Yeah, most of those who come to get tested are basically those who are having symptoms or who have come in close contact with somebody who have been tested positive for COVID. But also there's another group who are healthy but traveling or have a surgery to be done. And, some just do it out of fear also. So the gold standard for testing of COVID remains the nucleic acid detection test, what you all know as the RT-PCR test. There are different platforms to do this test. So based on the test, which platform we are doing, it depends on how long it takes. The most common one being the open system, where we do almost about 96 tests at the same time. So this will take about 4 to 5 hours to get a report. On the other hand, we have a cartridge-based test or a chip-based test, where you can do one test at a time, a few number of tests at a time, and this will take about 1 hour, which we usually do this for emergency tests. And recently we have come across what is called as a rapid PCR test, which is a new technology, and you can get the report within 15 minutes, which is what is used in as a point of care testing in emergency ward, in the airports, etc. So these are the nucleic acid based tests. Besides this, we also have the antigen testing, which is done as a screening testing, which will get you a report within a 30 minutes time. But only issue here is it's a slightly less sensitive test. So if it is positive, it's a final report. But if it is negative, you may have, and if you're still having symptoms, then we would suggest that you go for an RT-PCR test if it is negative. We have good news now recently that this test could come out as a test which you can be performed at home also. So we are looking forward to that, so that more people can get tested at home as a self-test. Besides this, we have blood tests, though they are not diagnostic tests, but they can give you an indication whether you have been exposed to the virus, that is looking for the antibody test. But for diagnosis, we would recommend the nucleic acid based test, that is the RT-PCR test. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Uma. Dr. Prithu, we are aware of the signs and symptoms by now of COVID, but what is the risk for a patient with comorbidities and how is their prognosis?
People with comorbidities are definitely at a higher risk of getting more moderate to severe COVID illness as compared to people with no comorbidities. Important comorbidities in them are, especially I would like, as right now our concerned audience here is more of students. I would say people who are obese are definitely at a higher risk. People who are chronic smokers are definitely at a higher risk. And apart from that, always people who are diabetic, who are having uncontrolled sugars, blood pressure, people with chronic heart diseases, liver diseases, lung diseases, or other illnesses in which they require to take some or the other sort of an immunosuppressive medicine, for example, say rheumatoid arthritis or some connective tissue disorders, or transplant patients who have received a liver transplant, lung transplant. All these people are definitely at a more higher risk of, I will not say getting COVID. For getting COVID, every one of us is at an equal risk, but for developing more severe COVID, they are at a higher risk.
Okay. How is their prognosis?
As regards to prognosis, as I said, more severe the disease you have, poorer is their prognosis. If you have a moderate disease or a severe disease, the chances of recovery respectively go down further. So definitely, more comorbidities you have, the prognosis is poorer than people without comorbids. and along with not only COVID, but COVID-related complications, like some secondary infections, which are most likely bacterial infections, and of late everyone has been hearing of the fungal infections which can happen. So these subset of people are more prone for developing secondary bacterial and fungal infections and having a poorer prognosis out of these as well.
Okay. Like you mentioned, a lot of students will be watching this. So what advice would you give to the students going to be taking the vaccines like now and over the coming months? Will they have some different symptoms, and or is it something to be afraid of?
Right now, in the current situation, we have only two definitive things to protect us from COVID. One is our social behavior, which is maintaining distance and wearing masks and proper hand washing. And the second thing is vaccine, because medication-wise or treatment-wise, whatever therapies are available, none of this therapy are assure you of a 100% cure rate. So for prevention is the best thing which we can do. And for prevention, as I mentioned, vaccination is one of the weapons we have in our hands. So definitely now, as in a phase-wise manner, students or anyone above the age of 18 is eligible for vaccination, I will definitely say that go ahead and get your vaccine. As regards to being aware of any expected symptoms or signs, or what you say as side effects or adverse effects of vaccines are, no one actually knows what are the long-term side effects or long-term effects of COVID vaccine, because even the first person in the world who received a vaccine on a trial basis is not more than, say, 1.5 years into receiving the vaccine. So no one knows what will happen 5 years down the line, or 10 years down the line, or even 2-3 years down the line. But as of right now, whatever studies and whatever data we have, vaccines are largely safe. Whatever side effects which are there post-vaccination are mostly mild side effects, which include mostly pain at the injection site, some redness, some warmth. Sometimes some people develop a little bit of fever, body pain, weakness after receiving vaccine. Some also do get some amount of minimal rashes at the vaccination site, can also feel giddy, may even have a little bit of vomiting or nausea kind of sensation. But most of these side effects are very short-lived. They do not last for more than 48 to 72 hours. And after that, it usually subsides by itself. So apart from these, there are not many major side effects of vaccine. Everyone must have read or must be reading some rare side effects which have been highlighted a lot by the media, like development of blood clots and etc. So these cases have been reported. There is no denial of that, but this much risk is pretty much there in any vaccine which we receive. All of us receive childhood vaccinations for many other infections. So if you could do a detailed research on that, all of these vaccines are also prone to cause some or the other severe side effects, like a blood clot, if not something else. But still we go ahead with the vaccine, taking the risk into consideration. So yes, serious side effects are there, but if you say it's very, very, very rare to get these serious side effects, and most of these are mild side effects, which I've already mentioned. So apart from this, I don't think you need to expect anything else or worry beyond that. So go ahead and get your shot whenever it's available.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I hope, students watching keep that in mind. Following up to that, Dr. Uma, is there any way to know whether my vaccine has been effective or not?
Yes, there is a blood test available. So what happens after you take the vaccine is that your body produces antibodies to fight the virus. So this can be detected in your blood. So there is a blood test called as the spike antibody test. And once you get enough a titer, it will be protective, which can be tested in the lab by a blood test. Preferable to take it after your second dose, minimum of at least 2 weeks after the second dose would be ideal time to take the test.
Okay. Finally, since we at IEEE UVC represent engineers, can you both doctors shed some light on what role technology has played
Yes, for us in the lab, definitely technology plays a very big role. Otherwise, we would be sitting and doing a manual method of testing and it would take days to come to a diagnosis. Now with the instruments that we use, not only the instrument, the IT of interfacing of the results, where we previously had to manually type all the results and give, which is now totally transferred from the instrument to the LIS, so that we get a faster report. Otherwise, typing each of these hundreds of reports that we do per day will take a lot of time. And what I explained about the RT-PCRs also earlier, where we do take about few hours, now you can get a result within 15 minutes. This itself shows you how much technology has helped us in giving a faster report from the laboratory. Yeah.
Dr. Prithu, is there anything on the like on your side that where technology has played a role?
Well, definitely, yes. Technology has been something which has helped us a lot, and I'm thankful that COVID has come in an era where we are pretty much doing well on the technology front. As you know, like nothing comes in and goes out of the COVID ward apart from patients and doctors. So manually getting reports or papers or something like that in and out is very difficult. So as there is a entirely computerized system for getting reports, it makes life easier for us. Whatever we need is available in the systems which are placed inside the COVID wards and the ICUs. Also, we have tablets which we use many a times on rounds in which we actually do feed up data as and how, or as you say, the daily progress sheets or daily progress notes of whatever we do at patient bedsides can be directly entered into the tablet rather than writing down actual notes in a pen and paper format. And these can directly be read or interpreted by people sitting outside. It also helps in, sometimes if you're not inside the COVID ward and some patients have some clinical issues and you have to address that quickly, then with the help of all gadgets which we have, live video can be shown of what the patient is having or what the patient is suffering from at this moment from the person sitting inside the ward, and you sitting in your cabin can try to give the best possible decision what to do. So yes, definitely technology has helped us so far, and as time progresses, I think so it will continue improving further, and it will make life easier for us. Though as engineering students, I will definitely request you if something you can do about maybe say the PPE kits. I know it's not part of actual engineering per se, but something which might help us in that way, making things more easier to work, providing a more comfortable working environment. That could be definitely more helpful. So yes, that's it.
Yes, I hope, yeah, some students take that into account. Finally, doctors, do you have any suggestion or advice for the students to help out with the current situation?
Well, it's good to know that students also want to contribute to the current situation. Every little bit will be useful. It's like as an individual, you can maybe in your apartments buy grocery for the elderly, or keep in touch with somebody who is sick and feeling lonely, or give them food, or transport somebody to the hospital, donate blood, take care of others' pets, whatever. These are on individual basis. But if you want to do something as a group, I think being engineering student, probably sharing of information, I think is very good. Like maybe people are struggling to get beds, people are struggling to find right hospitals. Maybe you can form a information sharing group, maybe, or fundraising group, or answer the queries. Or maybe there are many NGOs who want support. They are more organized. Probably you can join a NGO. These are some of the things that I can think of right now. Dr. Prithu, you want to add to that?
Yes, two things I would like to add. First, as an individual, now everywhere there is lockdown, but the most important thing is that when lockdown opens, be responsible citizens.
Yes.
Please, whenever you come out of your houses, please do continue wearing masks and maintaining physical distance, because that is the most important thing for us to get out of this pandemic situation. So I would still. Hello.
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there were some network issues. So the major reason for a second wave of the pandemic is laxity of social behavior, appropriate social behavior. So once the pandemic, the lockdown opens or eases at least a bit, please don't go out in groups together, or even if you do go out, please maintain physical distance, wear masks. I know all of us love to go out and have a chat and dinner with friends and everything. So this is the situation where COVID spreads from one individual to other individual. So until we are out of this situation completely, please try to avoid that as much as possible. So that is on an individual basis, and on a professional basis, as Dr. Uma already said, like if reliable information and reliable updates can be shared on the social media, that is definitely what everyone requires. Maybe live bed status across all the hospitals. What is the procedure to procure bed or procure medical care? How can someone reach out to an ambulance or something like that, and prevent spreading of rumors which come as regards COVID or COVID related treatment. So trying to form something like that will definitely help in controlling the pandemic and preventing the disease.
Right. So with that, we come to the end of this interview. Doctors, on behalf of IEEE UVC, I'd like to thank you for all that you've done for our nation during these trying times. Your efforts have definitely not gone unnoticed. Thank you also for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules to share your valuable knowledge with us today. I know it'll go a long way for students like me. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last note I would like to say, exercise, be physically healthy as well as mentally well-being is very important at this time. So take care of your mental health also. Yeah. Thank you.
And physical health as well. Physical health as well.
Yes, physical and mental well-being is important. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.